The smoke rose from burning buildings across the Zephyrian settlement on Zarian Prime. Commander Lirelei Nightwhisper stood on a hill watching her soldiers finish their work. Her silver hair moved in the wind as she cleaned her crystal blade. Blue blood dripped from the weapon onto the ground below. 3,000. Zephyrians had lived in this peaceful colony before dawn broke today. Now most were dead. The survivors sat in metal cages near the landing zone. Lirelei counted them with her cold green eyes. Maybe 200 females and children remained alive. The rest had fallen to her blade and her soldiers' weapons. Lirelei felt nothing as she looked at the destruction. She had done this many times before, on many different worlds. For 15 years she had led the Elven Dominion forces against alien species across 12 star systems. Her kill count had passed 50,000 long ago. The other races called her the Pale Death. She wore that name with pride. Captain Vera Starlight walked up the hill toward her commander. The young elf soldier had served under Lirelei for 3 years. She had learned to kill without mercy just like her leader. Vera stopped beside Lirelei and gave her report. The settlement had been completely destroyed. All military targets were eliminated. The surviving civilians were ready for transport to detention camps on the prison moon. Lirelei nodded and put her blade away. Another successful mission completed. Another alien threat removed from the galaxy. The Elven High Command would be pleased with her work here on Zarian Prime. Among the prisoners sat a young Zephyrian female named Kira Moonstone. Her blue skin was covered with dirt and tears. She had watched Lirelei kill her parents and brothers during the morning attack. Now she used her telepathic abilities to read the minds of her captors. When Kira touched Lirelei's mind, she found something terrible. Where most beings had emotions and feelings, there was only cold emptiness. This elf had turned her heart into ice. She felt no guilt or sadness about the thousands she had murdered. There was only duty and the belief that elves were better than all other life forms. Kira pulled her mind away quickly. Reading Lirelei's thoughts felt like touching frozen metal with bare hands. The elf commander had become something worse than evil. She had become nothing at all. The elven soldiers loaded the prisoners into transport ships. They would spend the rest of their lives in camps, working as slaves for the Dominion. Some would be used for medical experiments. Others would simply be forgotten until they died. Lirelei walked back to her flagship, the Starfire Vengeance. The massive vessel floated above the ruined settlement like a dark cloud. Its weapons could destroy entire cities in minutes. Under Lirelei's command it had burned dozens of worlds. On the bridge, Lirelei received new orders from Elven High Command. Her next target would be the Andromedan colonies on Serenity 7. Intelligence reports said the Andromedans were peaceful beings who spent their time growing food and making art. They had no military and posed no threat to anyone. That made them perfect targets for elimination. The High Command believed that all known elven species were dangerous simply by existing. Even peaceful races could become threats in the future. Better to destroy them now while they were weak and helpless. Lirelei studied the mission files on her computer screen. Serenity 7 had a population of 50,000 Andromedans spread across 5 farming communities. They had no shields or weapons to defend themselves. Her forces could eliminate them all in a single day. She was planning the attack routes when her communications officer interrupted her. A small ship had entered the Serenity 7 system. The vessel was requesting diplomatic immunity under the Galactic Accords. Its crew claimed to represent something called the Human Colonial Services. Lirelei frowned as she read the message. Humans were a new species that had recently joined the galactic community. She had heard reports about them from other commanders, but had never encountered them directly. Most elves considered humans to be another weak alien race that would eventually need to be eliminated. The human ship was tiny compared to her battle cruiser. It looked more like a cargo transport than a military vessel. Lirelei wondered why these humans had come to this remote system. Were they trying to interfere with her mission against the Andromedans? She ordered her helmsman to intercept the human vessel near Serenity 7 Moon. If these humans wanted to play diplomat, they could do it from inside her detention cells. Then she would continue with her original mission to cleanse the system of alien life. The Starfire Vengeance changed course and moved toward the small human ship. Lirelei stood on her bridge, watching the alien vessel grow larger on her main screen. Soon she would have another species to study and catalog before their eventual extinction. She had no idea that this encounter would change everything she believed about herself and the universe around her. The cold emptiness in her heart was about to meet something it had never faced before. Something that would crack the ice she had built around her soul and let light shine through the darkness she had created. Captain Amy Brooks sat in the pilot seat of her small diplomatic vessel, watching the huge elven warship approach. The human woman was 28 years old, with brown hair and kind eyes. She had been sent by Earth Colonial Services to make peaceful contact with alien species in this sector of space. Amy had no idea about the genocide happening in these systems. Her mission briefings mentioned that some species were having territorial disputes, but nothing about mass murder. She believed she was here to help different races work together and solve their problems through talking instead of fighting. Beside her in the co-pilot seat sat a small golden retriever puppy named Scout. The 3-month-old dog was Amy's companion, an emotional support animal. Earth regulations required all long-range diplomatic missions to include therapy animals to help human crews stay mentally healthy during months alone in space. Scout wagged his tail as he watched the stars through the main window. The puppy had been born on a space station and had never seen a planet's surface. Everything was new and exciting to him. He trusted Amy completely and felt safe wherever she took him. The elven battlecruiser, Starfire Vengeance, moved alongside Amy's ship and extended its docking tube. Amy activated her universal translator and prepared to meet her first elven contact. She had studied their culture during the long journey from Earth. The files described elves as an advanced species with strong military traditions. What the files had not mentioned was that elves considered all other species to be inferior life forms that deserved extinction. Amy would learn this fact very soon. Commander Lirelei Nightwhisper entered Amy's ship through the airlock, followed by 6 heavily armed elven soldiers. She wore black armor, covered with the symbols of her many military victories. Her crystal sword hung at her side, ready to be drawn at any moment. Lirelei expected to find another weak alien species cowering before her superior elven presence. Instead, she discovered Amy sitting calmly at a small table with a steaming cup of tea. The human woman smiled and gestured for Lirelei to sit down across from her. Amy offered tea to her elven guests and began talking about Earth and human culture. She spoke in simple words about how humans had learned to work together with other species on their home planet. She explained how they had domesticated wolves thousands of years ago, turning wild predators into loyal companions. As Amy talked, Scout wandered over to investigate the newcomers. The puppy had no fear of the armed elven soldiers. He sniffed at Lirelei boots and wagged his tail. When she did not react, Scout sat down and looked up at her with bright, curious eyes. Lirelei stared down at the small golden creature. She had seen many alien species during her military career. Most were either food animals or dangerous predators. She had never encountered a being that seemed to exist only to bring joy to another species. Amy noticed Lirelei's confusion and began explaining the relationship between humans and dogs. She told stories about how dogs helped humans in many ways. Some dogs guided blind people through busy streets. Others helped soldiers deal with the emotional pain of war. Many dogs simply provided friendship and love to families with children. The concept was completely foreign to Lirelei's mind. In elven society, the strong dominated the weak. There was no room for creatures that served no military or economic purpose. The idea that humans would care for another species just because they enjoyed their company made no sense to her. Scout seemed to sense Liralay's confusion. The puppy placed one small paw on her armored boot. His tail wagged harder as he tried to get her attention. For reasons she could not understand, Liralay felt her hand moving toward the small animal. She stopped herself before making contact. Touching alien life forms was against Elven military regulations. Her soldiers were watching and would report any unusual behavior to their superiors. Liralay forced herself to remain cold and distant, but something had changed inside her mind. For just a moment, the ice around her heart had cracked. She had felt an emotion she thought was dead forever. The puppy's innocent trust and joy had awakened something she had buried long ago. On board the Starfire, Vengeance Kira Moonstone felt the change through her telepathic abilities. The Zephyrian prisoner was locked in a detention cell with dozens of other survivors. When she touched Liralay's mind, she sensed a tiny spark of warmth, where before there had been only frozen emptiness. Kira could hardly believe what she was experiencing. The elf who had murdered her family was feeling something other than hatred for the first time in years. The small human animal had done what thousands of victims could not do. It had made the Pale Death hesitate. Amy continued talking about Earth. In human history, she shared stories about humans who had risked their lives to save endangered animals. She described how caring for pets had taught human children to be kind and gentle with other living beings. Liralay listened without speaking. Part of her wanted to draw her sword and end this strange conversation, but another part of her was fascinated by what she was hearing. This human spoke of concepts like mercy and compassion, as if they were strengths instead of weaknesses. Scout had grown tired of trying to get Liralay's attention. The puppy curled up next to Amy's feet and fell asleep. Even in sleep he seemed completely relaxed and happy. He trusted these strangers completely because his human companion showed no fear. Amy noticed that Liralay was staring at the sleeping puppy. She offered to let the elf commander visit Earth as part of a cultural exchange program. She believed that, seeing how different species lived together in peace, might help reduce tensions between their peoples. Liralay felt panic rising in her chest. These strange feelings the human in her animal had awakened were dangerous. They went against everything she had been taught about alien inferiority. She needed time to think and decide what to do about this unexpected situation. She ordered her soldiers to escort Amy to protective facilities aboard the Starfire Vengeance. Amy did not resist believing this was normal diplomatic procedure. She gathered Scout in her arms and followed the elven guards to their ship. As the humans were led away, Liralay remained alone in the small diplomatic vessel. She looked at the empty chair where Amy had sat. The teacup still sat on the table, growing cold. Everything seemed normal, but Liralay knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The tiny crack in her heart was growing wider. Something warm and alive was stirring in the frozen wasteland of her soul. She did not know what it meant or where it would lead. She only knew that the human and her innocent companion had changed something fundamental inside her mind. For the first time in 15 years of military service, Commander Liralay Nightwhisper was no longer completely certain about her mission to eliminate alien life from the galaxy. Liralay found herself walking to the detention level more often than necessary. She told her officers she was conducting interrogations of the human prisoner. In truth, she was drawn by something she could not name or understand. Amy had been given a small but comfortable cell near the ship medical bay. The human seemed calm despite being imprisoned. She spent her time caring for Scout and talking quietly to the other prisoners through the cell walls. Her gentle voice could be heard throughout the detention block. When Liralay entered Amy's cell, the human always smiled and offered her a seat. She never seemed angry or afraid. Instead, she continued sharing stories about Earth and the bond between humans and animals. Amy spoke as if they were friends having tea instead of captor and prisoner. Scout had grown comfortable with Liralay's presence. The puppy would run to her when she entered and try to climb onto her boots. His tail wagged constantly, and his eyes sparkled with joy. He seemed to think everyone he met was a potential friend and playmate. During one visit, Amy told Lirelei about service dogs that helped human soldiers deal with the emotional wounds of combat. She explained how these animals could sense when their humans were having nightmares or panic attacks. The dogs would wake them gently and provide comfort until the fear passed. Lirelei listened without responding, but the words stayed in her mind long after she left the cell. She had never considered that warriors might need healing from their battles. Elven military doctrine taught that emotional pain was a weakness to be ignored and overcome through discipline. Amy also shared stories about humans who worked to protect endangered species from extinction. She described scientists who spent years in remote locations studying rare animals. Some humans had given their lives to save creatures they had never seen before, simply because they believed every species had value. These concepts were completely alien to Lirelei worldview. She had been trained from childhood to see non-elven species as threats or resources. The idea that any being would sacrifice themselves for creatures they considered inferior was impossible for her to understand. But as the days passed, something strange began happening in Lirelei dreams. She started remembering things from her childhood that she had buried deep in her mind. Images of a small moonbird she had kept as a pet when she was 7 years old flooded back to her. The moonbird had been beautiful, with silver feathers that glowed softly in darkness. Lirelei had loved feeding it and listening to its gentle songs. The tiny creature had been her constant companion during the lonely years of military academy training. Then came the memory she had tried to forget, her instructors discovering the moonbird and demanding she kill it to prove her dedication to elven supremacy. The small creature looking at her with trust even as she raised the knife. The moment when something inside her heart froze forever. Lirelei woke from these dreams, feeling emotions she thought were dead. Guilt and sadness crashed over her like ocean waves. For the first time in 20 years, she remembered what it felt like to love something innocent and pure. Meanwhile, Kira Moonstone was using her telepathic abilities to communicate with the other Zephyrian prisoners. Through their mental network, they shared the amazing news that their captor was changing. The ice in Lirelei's mind was melting slowly but surely. Some prisoners wanted revenge against the elf who had destroyed their lives. But Kira convinced them to wait and see what would happen. She sensed that Lirelei's transformation could lead to freedom for many enslaved beings across the galaxy. Captain Vera Starlight was becoming concerned about her commander's unusual behavior. Lirelei was spending too much time with the prisoners instead of planning their next military operation. Her reports to Elven High Command had become shorter and less detailed. Vera decided to investigate the human prisoner herself. When she entered Amy's cell, she expected to find some kind of alien technology or mind-controlled device. Instead, she discovered a young woman playing with a small animal while humming a gentle song. Amy greeted Vera with the same kindness she showed everyone. She offered tea and began asking questions about Elven culture and history. Her genuine curiosity and friendly manner confused Vera, who had expected hostility or fear. Scout bounded over to the new visitor with his usual enthusiasm. He sniffed at Vera's boots and tried to get her attention by barking playfully. When she ignored him, he simply wagged his tail and went back to Amy's side. Vera left the cell feeling disturbed by what she had experienced. The humans seemed completely harmless, yet somehow she had affected their commander in ways that concerned the younger officer. She decided to send a private message to Elven High Command, reporting her observations. The message reached Inquisitor Luna Dawnbringer within hours. Luna was responsible for maintaining ideological purity among Elven military forces. She had executed dozens of commanders who showed signs of alien contamination or weakness. Luna read Vera's report with growing alarm. Commander Lirelei Nightwhisper was one of the Dominion's most successful military leaders. If she was being corrupted by exposure to inferior species, the situation needed immediate attention. The Inquisitor began preparing for a journey to the Starfire Vengeance. She would investigate Lirelei personally and determine if the commander could be saved or if she needed to be eliminated and replaced. Back on the battlecruiser, Lirelei made a decision that would change everything. She entered Amy's cell during the human sleep cycle and found her sick with fever. Amy had been caring for Scout, despite her illness putting the puppy needs before her own comfort. Scout was curled up next to his human companion, trying to keep her warm. When Amy shivered, the puppy pressed closer to her side. When she coughed, he licked her face gently, as if trying to heal her with his love. Lirelei watched this display of pure, selfless devotion and felt something break inside her chest. The last wall around her frozen heart crumbled away. Tears ran down her face for the first time since childhood, as she finally understood what she had lost when she killed her moonbird. She had thrown away her capacity for love and compassion in exchange for military success and elven approval. She had turned herself into a monster who could kill thousands without feeling anything. But watching Amy and Scout showed her that another path was possible. That night, Lirelei sat alone in her quarters, holding her crystal sword. The weapon had taken so many lives over the years. It was stained with the blood of innocents who had done nothing wrong, except being born as nan-elven species. She thought about all the children she had orphaned and all the families she had destroyed. The weight of 50,000 murders pressed down on her like a mountain. How could she ever find forgiveness for what she had done? But then she remembered Amy's gentle voice telling stories about redemption and second chances. The human believed that anyone could change if they truly wanted to become better. Even someone as lost as Lirelei might find a way back to the light. The crack in her heart was now a wide opening that let warmth and feeling flow through her entire being. She was no longer the pale death who killed without mercy. She was becoming someone new, someone who might actually deserve to live. Inquisitor Luna Dawnbringer arrived aboard the Starfire Vengeance 3 days later. Her ship docked with the battlecruiser during the night watch, when most of the crew was asleep. Luna preferred to conduct her investigations without advance warning to her targets. The Inquisitor was an ancient elf who had served the Dominion for over 300 years. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and her pale blue eyes seemed to look through people instead of at them. She wore the black robes of her office with pride and carried ceremonial weapons that had ended many lives. Luna went directly to the bridge where she found Lirelei staring out at the stars. The commander had not been sleeping well since her encounter with Amy and Scout. Dark circles under her eyes showed the strain she was feeling as her worldview continued to crumble. The Inquisitor wasted no time with pleasantries. She informed Lirelei that Elven High Command had received troubling reports about her behavior. There were concerns that prolonged exposure to alien species was affecting her judgment and loyalty to elven superiority. Lirelei tried to explain that she was simply gathering intelligence about human capabilities and intentions, but Luna could see through the lie immediately. The Inquisitor had dealt with contaminated officers many times before and recognized all the warning signs. Luna announced that she was taking command of the mission, effective immediately. Her first order was the execution of all prisoners, including the troublesome human and her animal companion. The executions would take place within the hour to prevent further contamination of the crew. Fear gripped Lirelei's heart as she realized what was about to happen. Amy and Scout were going to die because of her weakness and uncertainty. The two beings who had shown her that redemption was possible would be killed while she stood by helplessly. But Lirelei was no longer the same person who had destroyed the Zephyrian settlement. The warmth in her chest had grown into a burning flame that would not be extinguished. She could not let innocent beings die when she had the power to save them. She challenged Luna to single combat, claiming the ancient right of a military commander to determine the fate of her own prisoners. Luna accepted the challenge with cold amusement, believing that Lirelei had become too soft to fight effectively. The two elves met in the main hangar bay, surrounded by the entire crew. Captain Vera Starlight watched from the observation deck, wondering which commander she would be serving when the battle ended. She had sent the message that brought Luna here, but now felt uncertain about her decision. In the detention cells, Amy heard the commotion and realized something important was happening. Scout sensed her tension and pressed close to her side, offering what comfort he could. The other prisoners watched through their cell bars, hoping this meant their situation might improve. Kira Moonstone used her telepathic abilities to monitor the conflict from a distance. She could feel the emotions of both elven combatants as they prepared to fight. Luna's mind was filled with cold certainty while Lirelei burned with desperate hope. The two commanders drew their crystal swords and began circling each other in the empty hangar. Luna moved with the precision of centuries of combat experience. Her blade work was flawless as she attacked with killing strikes designed to end the fight quickly. Lirelei fought with the fury of someone who had everything to lose. She blocked Luna's attacks and countered with moves that surprised the older elf. The warmth in her heart gave her strength she had never felt before as she battled for the lives of those she had learned to care about. The fight raged across the hangar floor as sparks flew from clashing crystal blades. Both elves were skilled warriors, but they fought for different reasons. Luna wanted to preserve elven purity, while Lirelei fought for the chance to become something better than what she had been. As the battle continued, Lirelei began to gain the advantage. Her younger body and newfound passion gave her an edge over the ancient Inquisitor. Luna's desperate attacks became wilder as she realized she might actually lose this fight. Amy had managed to override the locks on her cell, using skills learned during diplomatic training. She ran through the corridors toward the hangar with Scout in her arms. The human woman knew she was probably too late, but she had to try to help somehow. She arrived just as Lirelei landed a decisive blow that sent Luna crashing to the deck. The Inquisitor's sword flew from her hand and skittered across the metal floor. Lirelei stood over her defeated opponent with her blade pointed at Luna's throat. For a moment, it seemed like the fight was over. Lirelei had won the right to protect her prisoners from execution. But she hesitated at the moment of victory, unable to deliver the killing blow to a fellow elf. Luna saw the hesitation and used it against her opponent. The Inquisitor had a hidden energy weapon in her robes that she drew and fired at Lirelei back. The blast should have killed the younger elf instantly, but Amy threw herself between the two combatants without thinking about her own safety. The energy beam meant for Lirelei struck the human woman in the chest, sending her crashing to the hangar floor. Scout yelped in terror as his beloved companion fell beside him. Rage, beyond anything she had ever felt, flooded through Lirelei as she watched Amy collapse. The human who had shown her the possibility of redemption was dying because of her moment of weakness. The woman who had treated everyone with kindness was paying the price for Lirelei. Hesitation. Luna tried to fire her weapon again, but Lirelei was already moving. The Commander Crystal Sword pierced the Inquisitor's heart before she could complete her attack. Luna fell to the deck with a look of surprise frozen on her ancient face. Lirelei dropped to her knees beside Amy and gathered the dying woman in her arms. Scout whimpered and licked Amy's face, desperately trying to wake her up. The puppy could not understand why his human would not respond to his efforts. Amy opened her eyes one final time and looked up at Lirelei with a peaceful smile. Blood ran from the corner of her mouth, but her voice was steady when she spoke. She told Lirelei that it was never too late to choose a different path. Everyone deserved a chance to become better than they were. She asked Lirelei to take care of Scout, and to remember that showing mercy was not weakness, but the greatest strength anyone could possess. With her last breath, Amy whispered that she forgave Lirelei for all the pain she had caused and believed she would find a way to make things right. The human woman died in the arms of the elf, who had once been known as the Pale Death. Scout pressed against Amy's still body, refusing to accept that she was gone. His pitiful whimpers echoed through the silent hangar as the crew watched their commander hold the being who had changed everything. Lirelei felt Amy's death like a dagger through her heart. The woman who had saved her soul was gone forever, but her final words burned in Liralay's mind like a sacred promise. She would honor Amy's sacrifice by becoming the person the human had believed she could be. The choice had been made in blood and sacrifice. There was no going back to the cold emptiness of her former life. Liralay would spend whatever time remained to her trying to undo the evil she had done and protect those who could not protect themselves. Amy's death changed everything aboard the Starfire Vengeance. Liralay stood in the hangar holding the human woman body while Scout whimpered beside them. The crew watched in silence as their commander wept for an alien she had once planned to execute. Captain Vera Starlight stepped forward, uncertain what to do next. She had helped bring the Inquisitor who caused this tragedy, but she also saw genuine pain in her commander's eyes. The cold killer, known as the Pale Death, was gone, replaced by someone capable of grief and love. Liralay gently placed Amy's body on a medical stretcher and picked up Scout. The small puppy pressed against her chest, seeking comfort from the only familiar presence left in his world. She made a promise to Amy's spirit that she would care for Scout, as the human had done. Her first act as the changed commander was to release all prisoners immediately. Kira Moonstone and the other Zephyrians were given medical treatment and supplies to return to any surviving colonies they could find. Many chose to stay and help with what came next. Liralay knew that Elven High Command would soon learn about Luna's death and her own betrayal of Dominion principles. She was now a traitor marked for execution by her own people, but she also knew what she had to do with whatever time remained to her. The Starfire Vengeance became a rescue ship instead of a weapon of genocide. Liralay used her knowledge of Dominion operations to locate prison camps and detention facilities throughout the sector. Her first rescue mission freed 3,000 Andromedan farmers from a slave colony. Kira Moonstone proved invaluable during these operations. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to locate prisoners and coordinate evacuations without alerting Elven guards. She worked alongside the elf who had killed her family because she could see the genuine change in Liralay's heart. Word of the rescue missions spread quickly through underground networks. Survivors of previous genocides began sending messages with locations of hidden camps and secret facilities. Soon, Liralay had intelligence about dozens of sites where aliens were held captive. Each rescue operation was both a military mission and an act of penance. Liralay personally led every assault, risking her life to save beings she had once considered worthless. She kept Amy's final words in her mind as she fought to free those who could not free themselves. Scout became the symbol of their cause. The golden puppy accompanied Liralay on every mission, providing emotional support to rescued prisoners. His innocent joy and boundless affection helped traumatized beings remember that not all powerful creatures were cruel and violent. Many species that had never worked together before joined the growing alliance. Former enemies united by their shared experience of elven oppression and their belief in the redemption Liralay represented. They called themselves Amy Alliance in honor of the human who had started it all. The Elven High Command responded by placing enormous bounties on Liralay's head and declaring her a traitor to be killed on sight. Battle fleets were dispatched to hunt her down and destroy anyone who helped her. The price of redemption was becoming higher every day. During a raid on a Dominion research facility, Liralay discovered something that filled her with horror. The elves were planning to attack Earth in retaliation for humanity's supposed corruption of their perfect executioner. Thousands of innocent humans would die because of her transformation. She knew it was probably a trap designed to lure her into a hopeless battle, but she could not let Ami people suffer for her crimes. She sent messages to every member of Amy Alliance asking for their help in defending the world that had produced such an extraordinary being. The response overwhelmed her with gratitude and hope. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species converged on the solar system to protect Earth from elven vengeance. Many of these beings had never seen humans before, but they remembered Amy's kindness through HFY Stories. The final battle took place near Earth-Moon, as the massive elven armada faced the diverse fleet of Amy Alliance. HFY flew her rebuilt flagship into combat, knowing she might not survive, but determined to honor Amy's sacrifice by protecting her homeworld. The fight seemed hopeless at first as elven superweapons tore through allied ships. But then something amazing happened that revealed Amy's final gift to the galaxy. Hidden human vessels emerged from behind the moon, carrying allies Amy had secretly contacted during her diplomatic missions. Peaceful species that had never fought before joined the battle to defend the principles Amy had died for. Scientists became warriors, and farmers became pilots, as beings throughout the sector chose courage over fear. The tide of battle turned, as love proved stronger than hatred. Scout sat on the bridge of HFY's ship, watching the lights of battle through the main window. The grown dog seemed to understand that they were fighting for something more important than territory or resources. They were fighting for the right to believe that redemption was possible for everyone. When the smoke cleared, the elven armada had been defeated, or scattered. Earth was safe, and Amy Alliance had proven that former enemies could become true friends. But the victory came at a terrible cost, as many brave beings had given their lives for this moment. In the aftermath, HFY established the Amy Brooks Memorial Foundation with Earth as its headquarters. The organization was dedicated to interspecies cooperation and the protection of endangered civilizations throughout the galaxy. Scout served as its official mascot and therapy animal. Years passed as the Foundation grew into a powerful force for peace and understanding. HFY spent every day working to save more lives than she had taken, knowing she could never truly balance the scales of justice. But she found peace in the attempt and hope in the progress they made. On the anniversary of Amy's death, HFY knelt at her grave in a memorial garden on Earth. Representatives from dozens of species stood nearby, including many she had once tried to exterminate. Scout, now old and gray, lay beside the headstone as alien children from many worlds played together nearby. Kira, Moonstone, placed her hand on HFY's shoulder and shared through telepathy the collective gratitude of millions who lived because of her transformation. The Zephyrian offered not forgiveness for acts that could never be undone, but the possibility of meaningful redemption through continued service. HFY looked up at the garden where children of former enemy species played together without fear or hatred. Amy's sacrifice had created something beautiful from the ashes of genocide. The human woman's final gift was proving that anyone could choose to become better than they were. Scout barked once and wagged his tail as he watched the children play. In that simple sound, HFY heard an echo of Amy's laughter and knew that somewhere in the vast universe the human woman's spirit was smiling at what they had built together. The story that began with death and hatred had become a tale of life and love. The pale death was gone forever, replaced by a guardian who would spend eternity protecting the innocent, in memory of a woman who believed that everyone deserved a second chance.